Hey guys, it's Justin Ledford, and welcome to the Real Construction Owners Podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing how military men and women can achieve financial freedom and generate passive income using construction and real estate. This applies to you whether you're in the military or not. And if you want to learn how to land $100,000+ contracts all the way to several $1,000,000 government construction contracts, I have a course that I created specifically for you, giving you a blueprint that you need to succeed as a government contractor. It's a self-paced university, so you can complete all of this at the comfort of your home. It includes 35 lectures as well as a 30-day challenge to help you win over $200,000 in government contracts, as well as a comprehensive digital manual and exclusive access to our private online university. If you're interested, I'll leave a link down below. I'd love to have you join us. Now let's go ahead and learn how to build passive income and achieve financial freedom. Whether you're in the military or not, this is going to be beneficial to you. Here we go.
Welcome to the Real Construction Owners Podcast, where we interview real construction owners and individuals doing big things to help you go from being a stressed out operator to a owner who is thriving at a high level in your life and your business. Today, we have a very special guest and a friend of mine, David, the Military Millionaire. And we're going to be covering lessons he learned as a Marine in the last decade when he served. We're going to be covering how he's acquired over 100 pieces of real estate that pay him passively. We're going to be covering creative financing, how he was able to fund and acquire those deals, and some of the top lessons that he learned in acquiring such a successful portfolio. So if you're thinking to yourself, hey, I'm a contractor, how is this going to apply to me? You're definitely not going to want to miss what he has to say, because you need to get in the game and investing and succeed at a high level so you can give your family a better life. Stay tuned. What's up, David? How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, Justin. Thanks for having me on the show.
Man, it's such an honor. Thank you for your service, first and foremost, for over a decade, serving our country. I commend you for that, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for the support. It was most of it was a good time.
Right on. So before we get into the goods and telling the story, I want people to understand some of your accolades. Don't hold back. You have the opportunity to brag a little bit. Tell us how you got to where you're at today. What were you doing then to this point, and share with us some insights.
Yeah. Well, so I'm an Eagle Scout, and nobody cares about any of that stuff. No,
Eagle Scouts are awesome.
That's an accolade, right? I graduated high school.
Right. I know how to make a fire with a stick.
That's true. I did go to jungle warfare survival school, so I also know how to trap things with sticks, and
nice.
I've eaten a snake, whatever.
No big deal.
Sorry. So now that we're going to talk about things that might actually be interesting to people. So, I joined the Marine Corps in 2008. In 2015, I had done all the things that a lot of service members do, right? I'd deployed to Afghanistan. I had some good times, some bad times. I had some really exciting stories. I got, some stuff here, some stuff there. I'd done a lot of cool stuff in the Marine Corps. And in 2015, I'd been in for 7 years, and I'd done what most service members do, which is financially, which is nothing. A little bit of contribution to my 401k, but I didn't know what funds to put in or anything. So it really hadn't grown. In fact, anyone who knows anything about the market can just imagine how fun it is now to look back and go, wow, between 2008 and 15, the market did really well, and I left my money in bonds. Awesome. Yeah. Wish I knew anything about anything then. I've done the math. My TSP would be almost triple what it is now had I just known to just change which fund it went into automatically. But
yeah,
I had a negative net worth in 2015. And somebody tried to get me into Amway, and they handed me Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I got into real estate. And so December 28th, 2015, I bought my first property, a duplex. And by October 2021, when I left the Marine Corps after 13 years active duty, and I jumped into the reserves for a little while, I had 100-ish doors between mostly 1 to 4 units, but then a couple small apartments and a hotel and then, like another 900 like small GP syndication investments and just a bunch of random other stuff. And more importantly, I was able to walk out of the Marine Corps and not only not take a W-2, but hire a full-time W-2 assistant to take over a lot of the stuff I was doing through my platform that I'd been building to help service members and vets learn about how to use the VA loan and how to get into real estate and how to, instead of when you relocate, buying some crazy house you can't afford, maybe buy a fourplex and be able to live for free and then be setting yourself up for the future. So, so it's pretty cool to be able to go from like 2015 broke and clueless to 2021. I wasn't by any means like a bajillionaire, but walking out of the military and not having had to get a job over the last year and a half, it's been pretty sweet.
That is impressive. What would you say are the top lessons from that broke and clueless to 2015 to 2021 to having over 100 doors? What would you say are some of the top lessons that you implemented?
Well, for one, I stopped buying fancy cars and toys and replaced them with houses. So I still haven't. I still kick myself sometimes. I sold my sports car and I still haven't replaced it. Every now and then I get the itch and I have to talk myself out of it. One of these days I'm gonna buy another fast car. But so that was one. Replaced most of my toys with assets, and the other was just consistency. I mean, it really isn't like getting wealthy is not the most complex thing in the world. It's just consistency. And the more I look around at the people who have quote unquote made it in life, the more I realize that the vast majority of them didn't do a whole lot of crazy things. I mean, there's the anomalies who built these ridiculous businesses, but the vast majority just kept their debt low, invested the difference, and kept doing that for enough time that eventually they were like, hey, look, I'm doing really well. And
that's so true. That's so true. So assets over liabilities has been one of your big things. You're buying assets that give you dividends or cash flow instead of buying all the fancy stuff that comes out every day of the week. And then consistency in your investing. You're taking your earnings and putting some aside in syndications or more investing, because you understand you're paying your future self. You're paying your children to have a better life, your future grandchildren, so they can have a better life. If you were to say one more tip that you mentioned something about creative financing in our early talk, like let's dive into that topic, how you've acquired 100+ doors in that short amount of time. Can you walk us through some scenarios?
Yeah, the creative financing was cool because I didn't have any money. So the first property I bought was an FHA loan, 3.5% down. Anyone can do that on a primary. And I am a huge proponent of the house hacking idea where you buy a duplex, triplex, fourplex, and let your tenants pay down the mortgage while you live for free, right? Because your living expense is your biggest expense. And if you can cut that off the table, you can invest or save everything you were going to be spending on your rent or mortgage, which is just an immediate, like massive increase to how quickly you can get out of the rat race, right? Plus,
and not to mention that somebody else is paying off your mortgage. So with that, you're increasing your net worth, however much they're paying off every year.
Yeah. And you're learning how to be a landlord. And I mean, it's not scary like buying your first investment is, because you're buying a house that you got to live somewhere anyway. Like there's so many benefits to it. So that's great. My second investment though was a 10 unit, and I didn't have money to get into it. It was a 240,000 is what it appraised for. I got it for 212.5. This is in Missouri, so in 2017, and it wasn't in great shape. So I mean, these are all like cheapo prices. But I was mailing for duplexes, writing handwritten letters to people who own duplexes, trying to find one. And this guy called me back. He's like, I got a duplex, but I don't want to sell it, but I've got this thing if you're interested. And I was very nervous. I didn't know anything about owning a 10 unit. It seemed way out of my league, but the numbers seemed to make sense. So I bounced them off a few friends, and they said everything made sense. I started doing the math on how much money I would need if I put 25% down on this thing or 20% down. And I had nowhere near that much money. And so I found a
Like
bank that was willing.
65 grand or something you needed.
Yeah, something like that. And so I found a bank that was willing to do 85% down. And I was like, okay, so I would need like 35,000 plus closing
35.
costs, probably 35 or 40 grand. I'm like, all right, still don't have that. So I'm talking to the seller, and I get the seller to agree to do 10% down. And I'm like, like the seller's going to carry 10% as a second mortgage, seller carry. And the bank was cool with, actually the bank was cool with 80%. The seller was going to do 10%. And then we reduced the price of the property. And there was just some nuanced things that kind of happened. It ended up to where when we closed on that property, I think it was 4.9% down. I actually pulled it up the other day because I was showing somebody, I did a podcast where they like want to like validate the deal you're talking about, and they like asked to see the HUD, and I went like digging. I was like, all right, cool, fine, I'll validate this story. So I'm like going through the HUD. I'm like, I paid $10,990.62 to purchase this 10 unit, and they were like, what? I'm like, no, I'm showing you right here, like this is the check. And
Wow.
so that I put basically $11,000 down on a $212,000 10 unit, with the other guy covered 10% seller carry. The bank covered 85%. And I bought it for $212,500. And 4 years to the day later, I sold it for $340,000, and it cash flowed every year I owned it. And that property was probably my favorite deal ever.
That's amazing. So you made like 120 plus thousand plus a cash flowed. And for contractors who basically don't have a lot of this experience but are intrigued by this, when you say you found a bank, you basically pounded the phone and you basically talked to a bunch of banks, told them the deal details, and found somebody who said yes. And then if you could go a little deeper on that seller 10% seller carry, what does that mean, and how did you inspire him to do that? Like, what does that mean, and how did you inspire him to do that?
Yeah, this was actually the easiest seller carry I've ever pulled off. Usually it's a little bit more complex because you're talking to someone who doesn't understand investing, and we can have a conversation about that for sure. I've done that a lot of times too. But seller carry or seller financing or owner financing essentially it would be like if I said, hey, Justin, I'm going to buy your car for $2,000. But instead of going to the bank and getting a loan for $2,000 and handing you a check, I'd like to make 20 payments of $100 a month to you. Are you cool with that? Or I'd like to make 20 payments of $110 a month to you, and that's 10% interest, or, however that math shakes out. Are you cool with that? And if you were like, oh, I don't really need the money right this moment, and sure, I'd like to have $110 a month coming in for the next 20 months. Yeah, Dave, I'm cool with that. Then you hand me the title, but with a piece of paper that says, Dave's going to pay me $110 a month for the next 20 months. And we keep track of it. And as long as I make those payments, I get the card. If I stop making those payments, you get the car back. Pretty much the gist.
And the reason it's beneficial to that seller to do that, how did you explain? Like, if they're kind of confused, explain to our audience like how you would pitch it to that seller, like why this might be a benefit to him.
Yeah, so that's in this scenario is really easy. He really wanted this thing gone, and because it was a headache property in a part of town that not a whole lot of people wanted to mess with, and he had been trying to sell it and nobody really wanted to buy it because it was a headache property in a part of town no one wanted to deal with. Nick, the new guy investor who's a Marine, is like, oh yeah, well,
I got this.
Yeah, like I don't have money, but I've got angry combat experience and time. I'll deal with a crappy property that nobody wants to go in. Now I wouldn't do that because I'm like, whoa, my time is way more valuable than that headache. I will buy a better, easier property. But I was able to basically be like, cool, man, I will 100% take your property exactly how you want it, but I don't have the money down. So I need you to help me by doing this. And he was like, whatever it takes, but in other conversations, and this is where it gets to where you've really got to kind of understand the nuances of it. There's a lot of reasons that sellers might be open to creative financing. The problem is they don't understand it. So like a lot of buyers or investors, they don't land these kinds of deals solely because they understand creative financing fundamentally enough to have the conversation as investor to investor, but they don't understand it enough to have the conversation as investor to person who has no idea that this exists, right? And so if I'm talking to grandma and I'm like, yeah, I can buy your house, but instead of giving you a check, how about I make 360 payments at 7.3% interest on a 30-year AM for this with a 7-year balloon? Grandma's like, I don't know what that means. Just give me a check,
Yeah. So instead of giving grandma, $300,000, essentially you would have to explain it to grandma like, hey, I'm going to give you $1,200 or $1,100 a month for 30 months.
Yep.
And then there's whatever, like a balloon, meaning that it ends at that time. And if you don't pay it off by that time, then it ends up costing a lot more. Is that right?
Yeah. And so it comes down to understanding what the seller really needs. And so there's a couple different ways that this normally pans out. The most common way is usually one of two scenarios. One, person really needs to get out of the house quick. They need a set number of cash. After that, they don't care about having the money. So like say they need to move to another state really quick. They need $20,000. After that, they really don't need the lump sum. So you can, hey, I'll give you 20,000 down, and whatever the difference is, like as long as you make the break even, then I'll pay you that in payments. Or I am just tired of being a landlord. I don't need any money down because I don't want to pay the capital gains tax on a massive distribution, and I don't want a lump sum that I'm going to blow. I'd still like to have the monthly income. I'm just tired of dealing with this tenant because I'm 65 years old. Would you want to take the property? But and so you can structure it there where it's like, hey, I'll pay you $0 down. I'll give you $500 a month for the next 120 months, which would be a $60,000 purchase if there's no interest on it. But that's $500 a month in your pocket, and you don't have to do anything because I'm taking the property off your hands. And so
that's so smart, because a lot of like investors, they understand the capital gains, negatives of capital gains. So if they sell that $212,000 property, they have to pay capital gains on it. And
Yep.
so basically, if you could tell us another story of your 100 doors, where you found it and you got a unique seller financing scenario, and how you made that creative financing go down.
Yeah, another well, this one actually, the sale of this will happen in 11 days. This one's kind of fun. This is one that I just like because nobody like this. The thing with seller financing is that literally anything is possible, right? I mean, anything that you agree to, the sky's the limit. And people think, oh, you're taking advantage of. No, it's just understanding what the person needs and then meeting them there. So in this scenario, this guy had a house that it was grandma's house. Grandma passed away. They spent a bunch of money, remodeled it. Grandson moved in. And so son of grandma owned it, remodeled it. Grandson moved into it. Maybe a month later, grandson's cooking something, goes in the living room, grease fire, bada bing, bada boom. There's not much house left. I mean, the house's shell is fine, but for reference, for all of the contractors listening, we're talking a
interest claim,
$170,000 renovation on a $230,000 house, right? It should have been $120,000 renovation, but there were some other issues underlying that nobody realized. Knob and tube, no big deal. Things like that.
It's all good.
Had a project manager run 100 amp through the house instead of 200 amp and had to redo it. Fun stuff.
Right.
He's not my project manager anymore.
Hey, they gotta have good insurance. So that's interesting. Did he take the what did you do, and how did you acquire? Like, how'd you find this person? Give us the goods.
Yeah. So house had been sitting for a year and a half. I don't know what the story was on insurance. It was not fixed at all. He'd been trying to sell it at $50,000. Nobody was biting at all. My number was 32. I was like, and we'd come up like that was my top dollar was 32. And I'd found it direct mail, been sending letters for things. And this was one that was listed on the county's dangerous properties list because it was a code violation, really not a code violation so much as just, hey, it had been slapped on the, fire code or whatever for needing XYZ. And it had just, the power had never been turned back on. So it was just listed as open permits. And so get a hold of the owner. He'd been trying to sell it kind of, halfway trying to sell it for 50. Didn't want to take less than 50. We go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for like 2 months. I get him down to like $38,000 and he is just, that's where he's stuck. I'm like, well, 32 is, we're pushing it, but $6,000 spread. So we started doing all kinds of math in my head and I'm like, we're going back and forth and all this different stuff. And finally, I had this really weird idea. I was like, I don't know if he's going to go for this, but I just called him one day. I was like, hey, what if I could give you your $38,000, but I told you that the only way I could do it was if I gave it to you when I was done with the house? And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, what if I just I bought the house from you and you gave me 12 months to pay you the $38,000? And he was like, he thought about it and he said, okay. And so I bought the house, 0 down, no interest and no payments for 12 months, flipped the house and it closes.
Whoa. Yeah. 0 down, no interest and no payments for 12 months. Okay. That right there is just fire. Yep. So how'd you do that? How'd you get a $38,000 house for 0 down, 0 payments for 12 months? Can go a little further, elaborate a little more.
That's basically it. The guy was just so dead set on his number. That was all that mattered to him, was making sure that he won that side of the negotiation, was his $38,000 number. He did not want to lose on the number. That was the thing that mattered to him, was in his head was the pride point on that number, whatever. And I was like, I can't, there's no other way that I can make this number work unless I can just not pay it until I'm done with the house. And so I was a shot in the dark. At this point, I thought the project was lost. I was like, there's no way this dude's going to agree to this. And he did. And I was like, oh, right. So to kid you not, the only thing that I brought to the closing table when we bought this house, other than title search,
title search.
Yeah. They forgot about property taxes. And I was like, you know what, that's not a big enough deal. So it was like $300 or something like that. And I paid the property taxes. So that was what I paid for the first year. And the house sells in 11 days and I'll pay him his $38,000.
Okay. So let's talk about that. So this is the contractor coming in, listening, and ears peeking up, because contractors are the best suited for investing. Instead of buying toys and more trucks and boats and silly dumb stuff, listen to what he's saying. Buy assets and use your skill set, because you can find the labor cheap. You know how to get the construction done. Now let's talk about the construction of that property. What all did you have to do? How'd you manage it? Give us those insights.
Yeah, and for the record, any contractor would have been able to make way more money with this project than I am, because I had a project manager get fired in the middle, and said project manager, I think, knew that was going to happen because he took one of my employees off the job site before that went down and said he was going to go do something else. I don't know. It was a whole mess. And a lot of things were done really poorly that I found out down the road. Like, as we're going through this, we were 500 square feet short on the subfloor, that was ordered originally. We were an entire exterior wall short on the original order of siding. We were, it was like every step of the way, I'm finding out like, oh, the original order for this was wrong. The original order for that was wrong. No wonder the budget's off. Everything was short.
That makes me concerned, because that sounds like theft in my world of being an expert contractor. Like, subcontractors, not saying they do this intentionally, but sometimes they do. They'll buy it and then return it and get the credit, and the investor never knows.
Well, that very well could be the case. Yeah.
When somebody does bad deeds with their own hands, then they get more hardship in their life. That's what I believe. So that seems like maybe that happened to him.
No.
Anyway, I digress. Go back to the story.
Yeah. So, we definitely went over budget and over timeline and everything else with this project. But I will say, as far as painful projects go, my before and after pictures on this thing are the best of any project I've got, because it's this ugly, burned out, blacked out drywall house that is the nicest thing I've ever put on the market. We chopped up a nasty looking den and turned it into this baller master suite with a walk-in closet with a washer dryer stack, and there was this weird like cedar attic room that wasn't finished that we turned into a bedroom. The basement was like crappy old wooden paneling throughout, and we just knocked it all out and white walled it, and it's this massive like 1,800 square foot basement now that's got 7.5 foot ceilings. And
Nice.
so yeah, the house looks awesome. But I mean, the project, man, any contractor would have come in and crushed it with that thing, because they would have gone in knowing what I didn't know, right? Knowing that there was like just stupid things like, hey, there's plaster under all this mess. It's going to take you a whole lot longer to get all this drywall off than you think there is. We don't need to pull XYZ out of this. We probably should just leave that alone. There were just a lot of things that we did with that property that we didn't need to do.
And did you go put eyes on it, or did you manage it remotely?
Yeah, I did. Probably not as much as I should have at first, because I thought that things were going a lot better with my project manager at first. We had done a few projects before and they had gone smoothly. I did not, I trusted him, didn't realize that things were the times they were a changing, as the song goes, right? Until it was a little too late. And this was the project where I was like, oh, things are not going as well as the first few projects together. So I probably should have been a little bit more hands-on with this one.
Okay. Was there a construction schedule and payment schedule in place?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, you had that right. That's good. And so what'd you sell it for? What are you going to sell it for?
Yeah, so this one, like I said, we went over on everything. So this one's not nearly as nice as I'd like to be. I am all in on this one. I want to say at like 187 and under contract at 220. So still not a whole lot of wiggle room, but could be worse.
Yeah.
As far as failed projects go,
lessons learned and a little money made. And then how'd you fund that? How'd you fund that construction of that $100,000+ construction?
Well, 90 of it came from a GoBro as a private lender, and the rest of it came from Dave.
Okay.
Just stuffing his own cash in, hazing himself, going, oh my God, how did I mess this up? Yep, I'll cut another check in there.
So, okay, so we covered the painful, expensive lesson for the day. Now let's but you did learn some lessons and you're going to make a little money on it. So that's cool.
And I get all my money back. So,
Yeah. And you helped that guy out. So
yeah,
kudos. What's another of the 100 doors where you did creative financing?
I've done a couple lease options too, which is cool, right? So lease options are another simple way to pull stuff off where, you might just like a lease option fee where, hey, I need to close, like I need to close something fast because they need to do in one case, for example, gentleman was trying to move to Florida like within the week, and there was no way to get title work done. And in this scenario, this is actually so we were with a letter to a single family house. He's like, I will sell you the single family house if you buy everything I own. I'm like, okay, well, what is that? He's like, a single family, a 15 unit, a 23 unit, and a 40 unit hotel. And I'm like, I don't know anything about hotels. And anyway, so we agree after we look through everything. By the time we come to terms on everything, he's like, I'm moving to Florida on Monday. And we're like, it's Thursday. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm leaving. And so we're like, okay, well, whatever, we'll do we agree to everything. And he's like, yeah, but I can't operate the hotel. Like, you have to take over. So the other stuff, it's like it all can do its own thing. It's got long-term property management, whatever. But the hotel, he's basically like, if you want this to work, you have to be operating the hotel on Monday. And we're like, what? And he's like, and he's in this weird window of like, he bought it from bank-owned foreclosure to turn it into assisted living, and the city told him they weren't going to let him turn it into assisted living, and so he never intended to operate it as a hotel. He's old enough to retire, doesn't want to deal with full-time management of a hotel, but he's still within the short-term capital gains window. And so he's got like 3 months left on that. And he's like, I can't sell it to you for 3 months or I'm going to just get destroyed on capital gains. But I also won't be in the state to deal with it. So like, what's the best thing to do here? And I'm like, well, if we're taking over this thing on Monday and you can't technically sell it until November 6th, or you're going to get destroyed on capital gains, then the only option I see is that we give you a fee as a lease option and we get to operate it for the next 3 months as the controlling entity. And during that 3 months, we count that as our due diligence period, and the fees fully refundable during that time period. And that's our due diligence period. And, we either close on November 16th or we take our due diligence money back. And he was like, okay. And so literally like we drafted this thing up on a Friday. Like I'm in California and my buddy is sitting at his kitchen table drafting up this lease option, emailing it to us all and my attorney and everyone else. And Monday morning we showed up with a check for $100,000 to take the whole kit and caboodle down, 79 doors, 2.325 purchase price for all 79 doors, and took control of the hotel on Monday, and we own the hotel.
And so do you have somebody running it?
Yep, we've got at first one of the guys in our 3-person partnership was running it for a while, and we realized that was terrible. So we currently have a couple that has flipped a few hotels or run them, who's moved in, and they're helping us revamp it because the hotel was rough for a little while just because, oh my gosh, a whole different beast. A whole different animal. I mean, we got 7 employees and they're not the same 7 that started with us. And, so that's a whole different story, but
yes. Wow, dude, you are a freaking fail forward kind of guy. I love that. And some of the lessons I'm learning are you collaborate to dominate. You don't just depend on your own skills. Like you reach out to others, you find money, you work with partners. And that's like one of the keys to success. You can't always try to white grip fist everything and say it's all mine, because you'll only go so far. You have to collaborate with people. Now, with that 100 doors that you've acquired, I know some are syndications, but my listeners are always curious, what's your monthly note and what's your payout on top of it? Like, what's the difference? What are you taking home from that?
On like total?
Yeah.
The hotel fluctuates enough that it's wild because the hotel is like, man, some months it's the expenses hover between like 28,000 and 35,000 depending on like occupancy, and it usually brings in, right, I mean it's been rough for a little while, but it's usually like only around $4,000 or $5,000 that we clear with it, and there's 3 of us. We haven't taken profit on the hotel yet, but it's it's in there. We're just doing capital expenditures or capital improvements.
Yep.
The apartments are, in between the 2 of them, we probably net about 500 a piece, about 1,000 each for each of the 3 of us, and then for the rest of my stuff, I probably average about 3,500, 4,000 per it. And I think that's, so I did things right, things wrong. It really has fluctuated over the years. And I guess it really depends on how you look at the portfolio. So thing right that I did was tapped a lot of equity over the last few years to scale things. Thing wrong that I did with that is on a lot of it, I did arms. They have ceilings, but the ceiling is 7. And so a lot of them have, tapped said ceiling. And so my notes are higher now than they were a year and a half ago. So my cash flow kind of a little bit.
Yeah.
But it balanced out because I bought into a RV park and a couple other things with that money. So when rates come back down a little bit, notes will come back down, rents will not.
Yeah.
So it all balances out in the long run.
And the thing that listeners need to understand is you still have the asset, you still have somebody paying off the note, you still get all the tax benefits for your income. So there's so many benefits, even if it's not, making $1,000 per door per month. You have so many benefits, not to mention the tax. Like I said, the somebody's paying off your notes. That's awesome, man. Now I'm curious about these.
More in principal pay down every month than there is in cash flow.
Yeah. Regarding sending mailers, So you just handwrite these? You have like a machine that handwrite them?
I hand wrote them at first, and I will never do that again. At this point, I use a company, Ballpoint Marketing, when I send them. My buddy Ryan Dossie is the founder of Ballpoint Marketing. In fact, if you go and you make the mistake of Googling or Facebooking that company, you will probably see my ugly ads all over the place, because at one point they showed up and filmed commercials using my face for with the hotel and some other stuff for their marketing. And I think people still get targeted ads with my ugly mug from some of that stuff. But they do they have like the machines that use ballpoint pens that actually look handwritten on like postcards and letters, and they're a little bit more expensive, but I had a better response rate. I know the postcards that are just like little yellow postcards do work. I always liked the idea that mine stuck out when they were in a mailbox and looked kind of handwritten, even if they, I don't know.
I like that. I like that. That's, you just spend a little bit more, but you get they look at it and like, this is different. I'm going to call this guy. Now, you did mention county dangerous property list. That's a clever strategy I've never heard on the podcast. Is that something you do still, or just did that one time?
Oh yeah, no. So you can pull, most counties will do this. You can pull the list of, they call it different things, different. There's a couple different lists like that you can pull. There's all kinds of niche lists, right? And I pulled all kinds of stuff, and then I use this tool called REI Sift, which you can upload different lists. So you can upload, just for example, you could upload the pre-foreclosure list, and you could upload vacant property list, and you could upload absentee homeowner list, and you could upload probate list, and you could upload hazardous property list or whatever. And then REI Sift will take all that and go, hey, this property pinged for probate, absentee homeowner, and pre-foreclosure. Oh, I should probably call that person a bunch. So I really like that tool because it saves you on marketing, because you're marketing to more people who pop up on multiple things. But
Targeted.
Yeah, absolutely. So most counties or cities will have a list of, and there's a couple different versions. There's the like dangerous properties list, which is like, hey, your windows have been knocked out, like homeless are breaking in, like the city has identified that your house might fall over, like your property. This is the like nuisance.
There's a green glow coming out of the windows.
Yeah. Like the city is after you, right? And they will identify that. And that's like whatever. And they will usually, this is public. There's also the like nuisance list, which is like the neighbor reported your lawn is 5 feet tall, your mailbox is overflowing, your yard looks like Sanford and Sons. And these are also all things that are indicators of like trashed house, vacant property, whatever. And again, the city's after you. If this is also an absentee, landlord, probably a problem tenant. Landlord's probably fed up. Good person to target. There's also, and this is one I've never been able to pull because for whatever reason, my city utilities hates everybody.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So this is technically Freedom of Information Act. So they can't tell you no, but they have refused to give it to me and everybody else in my town. They tell me it's because their system doesn't know how to do it, but whatever, they should be able to figure it out because it's part of the Freedom of Information Act. You are allowed to pull water shutoffs. And so you should be able to call your city utilities and say, I want the water shutoff list. And in theory, right, anybody whose water is shut off is probably a vacant house because most people don't just live without water. And that's a pretty good way to tell, like, hey, this water's been shut off for 6 months. Should probably bug whoever owns that house.
And what do you do whenever you get that data and it's like an absentee? How do you find the owner of that asset?
So I pull most of these lists from PropStream. That's the platform that I use. And with PropStream, when you pull it, it will show you the property address, but it will also show you the
LLC
owner's
or
address,
the owner address. Yeah.
The tax record. Yeah. And so I mail the tax address.
And then what are some other tools that you're using to delegate or optimize?
Yeah, and PropStream for list pulling, REI Sift for stacking that data and whatever. RE Simply is my CRM, and those are like my three big like lifesavers. I have a website through Carrot that's kind of like a inbound lead stuff. I for a while I had some VAs that were doing cold calling for me. I kind of shut down like the full wholesaling company, so I'm not doing as much active outbound marketing, more just passive inbound stuff at this point. And a lot of the delegation stuff at this point is I have an assistant and I have other partners, and they've got like I have a phone call tonight at 9:15 with a bunch of guys in town who are interested in a mobile home park, and I basically didn't have any idea that it was happening until my friend was like, "Did you get that invite?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what's this about?" He's like, "Oh, you weren't like, I guess there's a group chat revolving around this that I didn't know I was in." And I'm in it because I'm part of the group of people who can pull this kind of thing off. And I'm like, "Oh, cool.
I'll join. I'll be there.
Yeah, I'm like, I should probably go read about this.
All right, Dave. So this is the rapid fire round. What's your superpower?
Networking.
And if a business, this is something I live by. If a business isn't helping you achieve more of your dreams than you have just a job, what would you say is the number one role of an owner or CEO in a company?
Number one role of an owner or a CEO. And I think the vision.
Love it. What process do you have in place to regularly win these types of these assets? If you could summarize it and just boom, boom, boom.
I mean, the direct mail, the marketing, but then to win the creative type assets, it's having those solution-based conversations where you're talking through the needs of the seller and being able to articulate how you can solve their needs in a way that other investors usually aren't able to conversate.
What characteristics or habits do you have that make you so successful?
Aside from being a workaholic, I journal every day, right? I pull one of these things out, which
not to mention we're gonna
which is now mine, right?
Check it out. Tell us about that. Tell us about this.
Well, I've been journaling for like 4 years, and the ones that I normally use were all backlogged. So I started using another one. And then I got fed up with like all the different journals that I was trying to use always being on back order. So I was like, I'm gonna make my own, and I'm gonna order them in bulk.
I need to get one. Look at mine. Mine just is falling apart. But it's got it's got millions of dollars worth of insights in there. So you created that. What is it called?
The Military Millionaire Planner.
Man, I gotta get one of those. That is so awesome. And in a little bit, we'll tell our audience where to get one of those. So you journal every day. That's the habit that you have. I love that because you can download like insights. Somebody wise on my podcast said 45 minutes a day, pen, journal, and sitting in a chair. And I get some of my best insights. And it sounds like you do too. Now, what would you say is your best process in your business?
Ooh, man, I've got some decent processes. I'm gonna just totally cop out and say evergreen content. And I don't know that in itself is an answer, but I think the way that I've grown so much is that I've been pretty good about saying, hey, I really want this type of person to find me. So I'm going to create content that is designed around when they're looking for XYZ questions to be answered. I will be in their face no matter what platform they're on. And so people just stumble across me all the time. And so while that part itself may not be the process, it leads into everything else.
And is that through, you posted, is it through SEO? Is it through YouTube? How, elaborate a little more.
Yeah, all the above, but most successful is YouTube. Yeah. Like if you were to go to YouTube right now, and we talked about REI Sift, I bet you right now, if you were to type in what is REI Sift on YouTube, it would probably be my ugly mug.
I love that. Best tip you can give an owner who's leading a team and wants to leave a legacy.
Oh, it wants to leave a legacy. Man, just don't pull the stopper. Don't hold back.
Don't hold back.
Yeah.
Dave, you were just dropping bomb after bomb. I love this. Thank you so much for being on the Real Construction Owners podcast. Dave, the Military Millionaire, you have some resources, a book, you have a planner. Hold those up. Talk to our audience. How can they get a hold of you, reach out to you, and get what you have to offer?
Yes, we do. We've got the No BS Guide to Military Life, and now the Military Millionaire planner. So this is everything I wish I'd known when I first joined the military, kind of broken down into one place. And then this is just 4 years of journaling and goals and daily 90-day planning, whatever, through 3 different types of journals and a bunch of executive coaching with some exercises all broken into one place. Where can people get a hold of me? I got a Facebook group with 50,000+ people in it called the Military Millionaire. So I'm usually in there. We have a mastermind.
50,000+?
Yeah, we got 52,000 in the Facebook group and somewhere around there on most other platforms.
What? Way to go, dude.
Yeah, it's been cool, man.
I cannot wait to see you in Lake Tahoe, boy. We're gonna be sitting in the hot tub. We're gonna be doing some blues, and I'll dust you. I'll dust you to the black. But dude, we're gonna have so much fun in Lake Tahoe. Dave, you've been a joy to talk with, and I can't wait to connect with you some more. Thank you for being on the Real Construction Owners Podcast.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Drop me a comment down below and let me know where you're listening from. Please remember to subscribe. And if you're interested in growing your construction business faster and learning how to double your construction company using government construction contracts, I'll have that link for you down in the comments below. I'll see you next time.